Okay, hey everybody, it is 5:34, and at this time I'd like to call our Teaching, Learning, Equity, and Pupil Services Committee to order. Ms. Shope, could we please have a roll call for attendance, please?
Tia Johnson.
Here.
Greg Schneider.
Present.
And Megan Miller.
Present.
All members are present.
Thank you very much. At this time, would anybody like to move to approve our agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's a motion by Schneider, second by Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Ms. Johnson, are you in favor of approving the agenda?
Yes, I said aye.
Oh, I missed you. Thank you.
No
Aye.
problem.
Okay.
Greg and I were in sync.
Oh, we're a tightly coordinated committee. Awesome. At this time, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the minutes from December 19th, 2023 for the committee?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that's a motion by Johnson, second by Schneider. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All right, motion passes unanimously. That takes us to our only information/discussion item for the evening, which is the open enrollment determination. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Melissa Beavers, our Executive Director of Pupil Services. Thank you.
Feels weird without a microphone.
I know.
We can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay, hi. Eric Weir is going to be supporting me as I need it. I'm here just to talk through open enrollment space determination. So, by statute, we have to take
Hey, folks, I'm sorry for interrupting. I don't know if Greg can hear the speaker, but it's really hard for me to hear the speaker. Can they speak up or turn up the microphone?
Just come sit. You're good.
Well, we need to test to see if they can hear from the TLE.
Okay.
Use your teacher
Can you hear me
voice.
now?
That's
Can
better.
you hear me?
Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay, so we're talking about open enrollment space determination. So I'm just going to get started with a little bit of like basic information about open enrollment. So what is open enrollment? It allows parents to apply for their children to attend public school in a district other than the one in which they live. And so the when, the where, the how to apply, I've just reminded everyone that the regular application period for the upcoming 24-25 school year opens February 5th and it closes April 30th. You can apply online during that regular window. There's also an alternate application process, and you can apply for the current school year, and that begins July 1st. And that is a PDF fill-enabled application only, and you can access that on the DPI website or by going into our enrollment office. They can help you with that. So in January, we have an obligation to determine the number of spaces we will allow for anyone who applies for open enrollment. So non-resident school districts are required to designate general and special education spaces available for the next school year start or at a January board meeting. So we've got to get this done today. We'll present to committee and then again to board tonight. So we must reference the criteria we use to determine space in board policy, which we just recently, not last month, but the month before, reviewed our open enrollment policy. And then we have to apply the criteria that we come up with consistently so that any decisions on space are not arbitrary or unreasonable. So if anybody would, what's the word I'm looking for? If anybody would want to dispute our decision to allow them in or not, DPI will uphold our decision as long as we've implemented criteria consistently, unless it was arbitrary or unreasonable. So again, if a district wishes to consider whether there is space available to provide special education or related services, it must determine the criteria it will use relative to the space and staff capacity. And then we must outline and follow it exactly and consistently in case of a dispute. And then it's really important to know that there's no state or federal special education caseload requirements. So the next thing you're looking at here on the screen is the data that we use to determine our seat allocation. And this is just, it's important to know this is just for special education. So you'll see all of the schools listed, and then the last three rows are therapies: occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech therapy. The first column is caseload size. And so when looking, and Eric, feel free to interrupt me if at any time I'm saying something that you would like to expand upon. Caseload size takes into account not necessarily the number of students, but we're moving towards a more workload-based approach. The state is, not just Beloit. So when you're looking at those numbers, we are using kind of the antiquated system that DPI pushed out years and years ago of weighting the number of students depending on their disability category, and then workload as well. And workload, we're talking about the number of students, the number of programs then they're implementing, the IEP and evaluation meetings, the paperwork that goes into it, and then managing any related services or service providers, a paraprofessional, anything like that. So that's what we're taking into consideration when we talk about caseload. The next column is case managers or therapists. That is the number of current staff members we have assigned to each building. And when I say current, that's not the number of FTE assigned, that's how many we have hired. So for example, I'll just direct your attention to Robinson Elementary. We currently have 2 special education teachers in that building, but we have positions posted still yet and unfilled. So we have to use what we have currently. And then capacity, so obviously to get capacity, we took the caseload size and multiplied that by the number of staff members. That's how we got capacity. And then the next column is projected enrollment, and our projected enrollment is the number of current students with special education needs in the building, with a slight padding for what we've noticed as historical data for the number of students that they gain every single year, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so then, doing the math there, we took capacity minus projected enrollment, and that's the number of open enrolled spaces that we would have available for anybody new that would come in and apply for open enrollment with the School District of Beloit. Again, this is only students with special education needs mm-hmm. that we're looking at. And so you can see the green, there's space available. The red, we're obviously over there. So this would be our administrative recommendation. It would be to we have unlimited space for general education. So anybody applying with a general ed need, we allow them in, but we would be recommending that we limit special education seats, and the allocations are over there to the right. So 9-12, we would have 42 seats available. 6-8 would be 21. For K through 5, we would have 3 seats available, and then physical therapy would be 16, and then we don't have any room in occupational or speech therapy. And then I'm just going to go back real quick, because the one thing I did not point out is the 3 blue boxes: occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech and language. Those caseload sizes are regulated by state statute. Those are the only ones that have a regulation, and there's a little bit of wiggle room dependent on, you know, how far they travel, if it's consultative or indirect versus direct services. So there's a little bit of wiggle room, but those are the only 3 areas that have any sort of regulation on them. So that is that's it. What kind of questions do you have for us?
All right, thank you so much for the presentation. Board Member Johnson, did you have any questions, comments?
You're muted.
Thanks.
No. Thanks. Just any suggestions on how to get the positions that are unfilled, how to get them filled?
let me jump in on that one. So there's a lot that goes in to that thought. First of all, recruiting. One of the things that we have to do better in this area is recruiting of our, special education positions. That's a statewide conversation that we're all having. And at the end of this month, just to, put our name in the hat, we are all offering our own recruitment fair for the school district of Beloit. Naturally, when we go to a lot of these conferences or recruitment fairs, there's, 50s, hundreds of people trying to, get a few candidates. And so this case, we will be offering folks to come to our school district to apply for our positions with just us. And so I think that's going to be something that we, retry here again here in the school district. I believe this hasn't been done since right before COVID timeframe, and before that, it wasn't a regular thing. But we do want to bring that back this year. Additionally, I've already also had some conversations at the state level around, what can we do to attract more people into education. There has to be a deeper conversation at the state level, meaning that I believe that there's some subsidies that we can start looking at that schools of education need to take into account. Back in the day, we used to have, scholarships for students who are interested in going into special education and or some form of an educational field. Those scholarships have, pretty much dwindled and or went away at the university level. And I'm pushing that those opportunities come back. We also know that at the national level, the government used to do a lot of work in recruiting teachers into the profession. And so that's something else that that I believe that we can actually get involved in at the state level that will also push it to the national level. Additionally, when we look at the Rock County area, there are university systems that we are all attached to. Naturally, we have 2 colleges right here in our backyard, and Black Hawk Tech, and of course, Beloit College. I have had conversations with both university presidents over the past 2 weeks about this very subject, and they are both on board with trying to see different opportunities to get more students into education. This is specifically about education, but also, and more specifically to special education. I had that conversation as well. So those are just a few things that we could do to try to increase our pool. The bottom line is our state is not graduating folk into, I like to say folk, some country at times, people into the educational field as much as they used to. Over 840,000 or so teachers will be not in our profession anymore, over the next a year or two. And so that's on average over 22,000 teachers right here in the state of Wisconsin. We do not graduate 22,000 teachers in the state of Wisconsin. And so not even close to that. And so there is a greater, and then again, that's a greater conversation that we need to keep having. But on the local side, we are trying to target just Beloit, having our own recruitment fairs for our own positions, and hopefully that'll, bring some light to the conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Garrison.
Oh, no problem.
Board Member Schneider?
I have no questions. I think Mrs. Beavers was very, very thorough. Again, concerned about the lack of staff in this area, but I also know the difficulty in recruitment. So I'm sure they're doing the best that they can in the situation we are until we can find the staff that we need.
Thank you so much, Board Member Schneider. So yeah, Ms. Beavers, I had submitted a question to you earlier, and it's ironically, staffing, right? So I'm just going to repeat the question. I really appreciate your response. I thought it was excellent, but I'm going to ask it for the benefit of our listeners here. So I just had asked, what impact does our open enrollment, I guess, like you caps the numbers, like what impact does this have on how we staff sites for special education support services? And then I actually have a side question because maybe I missed it on there. Is BLA, do we have numbers for BLA and their capacity as well? And I guess like how is that?
We didn't figure that because, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't enroll, yeah.
I was just curious. Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so can
Yes.
you talk us through kind of like what you had responded to me with the staffing impact?
Yeah, so,
Thank you.
the window closes April 30th. And so as we move into our staffing season, we have the number of applications that have been accepted. And so those numbers are already figured into our overall enrollment. And so when we assign staff members to buildings, we're already taking into account those open enrolled students. And then in regards to related services, I think there was a question about paraprofessionals. We do, we have an obligation to provide the services that that are delineated in the IEP. And so, if a student comes in needing a para support, we typically adjust programming within the building to meet the needs of each individual student. However, there might be a time where a student needs, specific one-on-one, but that's very, very seldom that we see that. And so, yeah, we staff accordingly to the needs that are coming into our building, and we've got those numbers when we're doing that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And since Dr. Garrison, since you were just talking about your advocacy locally, and we are hearing later on this evening about Ford NGL and our pathways, I just wanted to bring up also that since, is it still correct that we have a pretty high number of graduates comparably to other CTE programs who graduate with the assistant child care teacher certification? I think oh, okay. I think it's pretty high. It's like the ACCT. It's like one of those Act 59 industry recognized credentials. And we have a lot of kids who are graduating out into early childhood through BTC. And I wonder if that's an opportunity there as we're thinking about future relationships with Blackhawk Tech and having like kind of a K through 16 mindset in terms of our academies and kind of pathways. I wonder if that's an opportunity because I know that the Blackhawk Tech has a partnership with UW Whitewater and their school of education. So I wonder if there's maybe some more work or some more conversations to be had there in terms of maybe specializing in special education. Because I think Beloit Memorial already does an outstanding job graduating kids out with higher education credits already with ECE anyway. So.
Well, and if you remember, a couple meetings ago here at committee, Mr. Senrus presented a class, a special education class, so they will be starting.
I think what's interesting though is we also have a grow your own program, and I just wanted to bring note to that since we're talking about recruitment as well. Part of my job is to kind of try to remember everything I possibly can. But it's interesting though, the grow your own program is not new to our school district. We use the funds that's donated by our own staff to influence the conversation around scholarships with students who are interested in going into education. And that can be special education, that can be regular education, that can just be in the field of education as well. Every year, our teachers donate into the thousands of dollars for this Grow Your Own program. It's unique. I believe it's unique to this area, number one, but I also believe that through the in-kind donations of our staff, this is again something else that we're doing. We did most recently graduate one of our Grow Your Own candidates, and that candidate is now, I believe, working for us at Todd Elementary. Yeah, Todd Elementary. And forgive me, I forget her name. I see her face though.
Yeah.
And so it's something that we have to continuously work at. And so going back to your academies conversation, I believe not only in academies, we have academies, but we also have the Grow Your Own program. We're trying to do our own recruitment. We're doing the things that is innovative enough to keep the conversation moving towards bringing folk to the school district of Beloit. But it's going to take the continuous work around that. It's not oh yeah, we got it, and then we kind of wait and see what happens after that. But it's going to take continuous work beyond those opportunities there. And so we're moving in the right direction as it pertains to the recruitment. But there's many more positions that we have that we need, and the recruitment opportunities that we have here is shuffling the flowers in the basket, but we need more opportunities for all of our people who may be interested in to going into education. So it's a challenge.
Well, it sounds like we have a lot of really good pieces in place already, and I think this was a very informative presentation. Definitely appreciate it. And I know it's coming back to our meeting this evening so that we can get this all wrapped up for, you know, the January deadline. I really appreciate all the thoughtfulness and kind of just having these pieces in place. And Dr. Garrison, thanks so much for sharing kind of how those pieces come together in a larger vision and continuously building that recruitment capacity. So are there any other questions from committee members at this point before we move on to the agenda? I just really appreciate your time and thanks so much for putting that together. That takes us then to our meeting closing. Our next meeting date, oops, it's not loading on me, there it goes. So we'll meet next on Tuesday, February the 20th at 5:30 p.m. here at COLAC. And if there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
Megan, does this have to get moved? Do we need a motion for this to go to the full board?
It's already on the agenda, but do we need the motion formally? I think that because, no, Board Member Johnson, that's a really good question. And I think that since it's already been posted for consideration with recommended motion language to the general meeting, I don't think it's necessary, but if it's not gonna hurt, if we wanna just make sure we're crossing T's and dotting I's, I don't see the harm in making a formal motion if you'd like to do that.
Sure, I will move approval of moving this to the full board later this evening.
Sounds good. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you so much, Board Member Schneider. Okay, so Board Member Johnson has moved formally that we move the open enrollment space determination to the regular business meeting for tonight's agenda, seconded by Board Member Schneider. Any further discussion?
I would just like to add, I'm sorry.
Okay, I broke it.
I would just like to add that this is a full board vote, and so we brought it to the committee because I wanted the committee to, you know, hear it first, you know, and also kind of honor the space of just the conversation. It also gave us practice for this afternoon's presentation, and so I did just want the committee to, you know, again hear this opportunity. So regardless of you all moving it forward, which I thank you for doing so, it would have had to appear on the full board agenda due to policy. State statute, sorry, state statute.
I'm sorry for violating your space there.
That's okay.
Okay, no, I don't think that there's any harm in making a motion though, so that sounds good, and thank you for your thoughtfulness, Board Member Johnson. All in favor of taking action on this item to move it to the general meeting agenda, please say aye.
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 Aye, all right, motion passes. Okay, so we're back to our next meeting date, which is Tuesday, February 20th, which will be at 5:30 p.m. And if there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved by Board Member Schneider, seconded by Board Member Johnson at 5:58 p.m. to adjourn. All of those in favor of doing so, please say aye.
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 Oh, all right, thanks everybody. See you back at 6:30.
All right. Awesome.
All right. Yeah, that was good. Thank you, John.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks for
Yep,
being
take
here.
care.
Nikki, thanks so much for answering all that. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, let me mute this. This might not work. So.
good. But Sean, we got a hot mic and we're ready to go as soon as you are.
Craig, Brian, Amy, Greg.
Fred, so dramatic.
Joe's okay. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. I can hear you too.
Yes.
Yep, gotcha. All right. give me 1
Sean,
minute. Yes.
you're faint. I can hear you, but it's faint.
Okay. Where is the sound coming from?
Better now, okay.
Right there? Okay.
That's better. Thank you.
All right. No problem. Just let me make sure it's getting all together.
Thank you.
Don't hang that up.
Oh, no, can't do that.
All right,
Give me 1 minute.
no, you're good, you're good.
For my
You're up.
agendas. Fill my person in and board docs.
Mhm.
I'm gonna start with your introduction about the meeting location.
Oh, sure. So just so that everyone knows that the meeting location had to change due to our water damage that happened in our technology area. Right now, we're staging the boardroom as almost like a second place where we can put all the cabinetry that we had to move out of TC Networks into the boardroom currently. We do have some water damage, and we have let everyone know that for tonight's meeting, if you came to the boardroom, we are right next door to the boardroom in the training lab for tonight's meeting. Additionally, we did notify all of those who may have wanted to participate. So if you're on your way, please note that it will not be live tonight, but it will be recorded. And so I just want to make sure everyone is aware of that. We also consulted our legal conversation about about where we're having the meeting for tonight due to the emergency situation that transpired with the unfortunate pipes busting and the water damage. Thank you.
All right. So I'm ready to call to order our January 16th, 2024 Human Resource Committee meeting at 6:32 p.m. Mrs. Shope, could I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Tia Johnson,
Here.
Brian Nichols,
Here.
Brian Anderson,
Here.
Megan Miller. Present. Amy Levy,
Here.
Greg Schneider,
Present.
and Sean Levy.
Present.
All members are present.
Okay. Is there a motion for the approval of the agenda?
I'd like to move to amend the agenda, if I may. For item 2B, I just want to note that it's got Exhibit A listed, but not Exhibit B. So when we get to item 2B in our meeting, if we could postpone the discussion of Exhibit B to the next meeting when it can be properly noticed. Is that cool?
That's fine.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved by Board Member Megan Miller, seconded by Board Member Amy Levy. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right, that passes unanimously. And we're on to D.
Point of order.
Yep.
It's attached, but it's not in the language on the, it wasn't noticed in the agenda language. So same page, it looked beautiful, and then we'll get to it as soon as we can. Okay, thank you for clarifying. Absolutely, no, thank you for bringing it up.
All right. Is there a motion for the approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Amy Levy, and I think that was a second by Brian Nichols. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Employment recommendations, a motion may be made to convene the Human Resources Committee into closed session pursuant to section 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses C of the Wisconsin State Statutes relative to considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
Sean, I have a question.
Yes.
There's a non-closed session question. Can I ask this question before we move to go into closed session?
What you want? I'm sorry.
Well, we're only on A, which is to go into closed session.
We're only on A. Like if you can save it for afterwards. We're on the A part to go into closed session. We'll come back out and if you can ask it. Yeah. So, is there a motion for closed session?
So moved.
Is there a second? Who was it so moved?
That was
Schneider? Okay. That was Greg Schneider. Is there a second?
I'll provide a second.
Okay, Amy Levy with the second. Mr. Shop, give a roll call vote, please.
Excuse me. I have a question, referring back to Tina's question. If her question affects something that we're going to go into closed session about, shouldn't she be allowed to answer it now?
Just a point of order, there's already a motion and the second on the floor, so we should go ahead and have the vote. But when we come back into open, everyone will have opportunities to ask any open session questions.
All right.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Mr. Short, roll call, please.
Greg Schneider,
Aye.
Amy Levy,
Aye.
Megan Miller,
Aye.
Brian Anderson,
Aye.
Brian Nichols,
Aye.
Thea Johnson,
Aye.
Sean Levy.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously. All right, we will go into closed session. We'll reconvene in public in order to take any action if necessary on items discussed in closed and to ask those open session questions. All right. Make sure you click on the link and join the closed session link for the HR. Close.
right.
Yes, all right.
Human Resources Committee is reconvened in public session in order to take any action, if necessary, on items discussed in closed session. Are there any questions for open session?
Exhibit A.
All right, Brian Anderson has a hand raised.
Yeah, so for Exhibit A, we've got our newly created position of family advocate. And I just want to know, is that it shows as a transfer or promotion, but is that a new position created? A new person filling that role? Because we transferred everybody into that role. So is that a new position? Is it budgeted? I guess that's my question.
Yes, that position existed when we did the reclassification of the bilingual homeschool liaison to family advocate. That position was actually vacated back in November, and we posted it as bilingual homeschool liaison. In the process of coming to board for approval to do a reclassification, that person was extended an offer, accepted, and then the change in title happened. So it is an active FTE previously approved, and it is to replace a vacated seat.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other, Teresa Johnson?
So according to Dr. Garrison's email that we got, this job was posted in July, I think July 19th or something, 2023. So when it was posted as the previous position at the previous rate. I'm concerned that we're filling a position that looks different at a different rate and hasn't had a recent posting.
Well, we could not renege the offer that was already made at the time that it was being considered for reclassification. And the individual that has been selected meets all of the criteria of the changes that were made as part of the reclassification. And so we were honoring the offer letter that had already gone out and hiring them based on what that position is now.
She was offered the position in November, but we're just approving it now. This person, we're approving it now?
No, we did not offer her the position in November. We offered her the position, if I had to guess, I want to say it was probably like directly before the board approved the change. Yeah. I mean, I can look up the exact date, but the fact of the matter is that it was already offered based on the posting. Then we reclassified the position. She had already accepted her offer. And so now she completed all of the requirements to fill that role and coming to the board for final approval. But we can't hire her as a bilingual homeschool liaison because that position no longer exists.
Any other questions? Okay, Brian Nichols, hand raised. You got to unmute, please.
Yeah, that does help. I have to ask a clarifying question, Mrs. Almendares, on that. So we made her an offer before we had at a rate that before we had the approval of the Board of Education. Is that what you just said?
That is correct.
Why would we do that?
Her offer was based, the offer was based on whatever the bilingual homeschool rate was then. Due to the reclassification of the position, it made no sense to present it to the board with a rate that is no longer valid. So it has been updated since it was offered to reflect what the actual rate should be based on that reclassification.
Okay.
Nobody gets upset about a job offer going up. So it was
I understand. Nobody has a problem with that. I was just curious why we made the offer. You made the offer at the old position?
Yes, that was what was
Okay.
posted, that's the position that
Okay.
existed at the time.
Okay.
And we had to.
Okay,
Yeah.
clarifying complete. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the questions, though.
Any other questions for Exhibit A? Okay, would someone like to make a motion for Exhibit A?
I move approval of employee recommendation Exhibit A.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Board Member Amy Levy, seconded by Board Member Megan Miller. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay.
Nay.
All right. I believe that's a 6-1. The motion passes. All right. What's next? C, administrator contracts. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'd like to move that for the contract year of 2024 for operational and financial reasons, to approve one-year contracts with no rollovers for all administrators. The specific motion shall not apply to the superintendent whose contract has been addressed by a separate motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Board Member Megan Miller, seconded by Board Member Amy Levy. I'm having trouble with my mouse. All right, and tracking. Computers to do this from time to time. All right, Mr. Shook, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Tia Johnson?
I'm sorry.
Tia Johnson? Voting aye or nay?
On the administrator contracts.
Did we, I mean,
Your
I'm
motion.
sorry, the motion was real faint. So was it explained what's going on with the other, with those other
We'll get
three
to that
positions?
in discussion. I'll have the motion read again, and when we get to the discussion part, we'll do that.
Well,
Read the motion
discussion
again,
would
Megan.
come before the vote, just point of order.
We have the voting part? Okay, here we go. So we'll go back then. Read the motion again, Megan.
Sure. So for the contract year 2024, can you hear me okay, Board Member Johnson?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Sorry, I lost consciousness of our audio situation. For the contract year of 2024, for operational and financial reasons, the board is moving that the board approve one-year contracts with no rollovers for all administrators. However, the specific motion shall not apply to the superintendent whose contract will be addressed by a separate motion on this date.
So there was a motion by Megan, a second by Amy. We were on the vote, but we'll entertain discussion for clarity. You have a question for discussion? Teresa Johnson has her hand up.
So just an explanation, brief explanation of the three positions that are being changed. The three people that are being changed, administrators.
Okay, so we have a non-licensed AP who will be going to a coaching role. This vacates an AP position. We have two current principals who were displaced as a result of the reconfiguration, and they are being placed in an AP role within the AP wage scale to fill that vacancy and a vacancy at the high school. due to retirement.
So when there's a vacancy like that and we have somebody who's been displaced, we can place them in that position without that position having to be posted.
That is correct, because that is part of our policy. When you have an individual who would be laid off, they have the opportunity to move into an available position.
Okay, thank you.
And to clarify, I know you had mentioned that one of the positions that's being vacated is by somebody who's unlicensed, but they are appropriately licensed for the coaching position.
Correct.
Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They are appropriately, well, that when the board voted 5-2 to hire the person, there was, at that time, and there were two, there was arrangement made, an emergency licensure was requested. Their hiring was contingent on them completing a program. So that's the licensure situation of that.
Correct.
The board voted 5-2. Okay, that's being mindful. All right, so that's what we did. So now that is that. We're ready for the vote. We're asked for a roll call vote.
Tia Johnson,
Aye.
Brian Nichols,
Aye.
Brian Anderson,
Aye.
Megan Miller. Aye. Amy Levy,
Aye.
Craig Schneider,
Aye.
and Sean Levy.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right. We're on to D, superintendent contract. Is there a motion?
I move to extend the existing contract for Dr. Garrison for 1 year from July 1st, 2025 and expiring on June 30th, 2026, and authorize the board president to execute such a contract addendum.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion from Greg Schneider, second from Megan Miller. Is there any discussion? Amy Levy?
Just a comment of an explanation of why I can't support this. And I fully comprehend that a district administrator contract is different than an administrator contract. But in our current climate of financial and achievement space for growth and improvement, it just doesn't feel right to me to ask our administrators to have 1 year of security and have our superintendent, which the natural conclusion of the contract would be 1.5 years from now, to extend out to 2.5 years from now. So for those reasons, I can't support this.
Any others in discussion? Well, I will add then, the reason that we've come to offer this and why we put it in the contract of the superintendent before we hired the person, we had already discussed that, is to ensure that we have stability of leadership. In other administrator contracts, we have multiple principals in our district, we have multiple assistant principals in our district. And as we're continuing to go through a process of appropriately sizing our workforce for the number of students that we serve, we only have one superintendent. And we're going to always need a superintendent. And part of the act, the job, the work that we're doing is trying to stabilize the leadership of our district by having a superintendent and everyone knowing that we have one. And also, you know, even as board members have maintained and served their time of service and not interrupted their time of service. So it's a part of having that stability and leadership at the board level and the superintendent level. That is the purpose for that. But your point is noted. All right. So with that, is there any other discussion?
No, I just like a roll call vote, please.
Okay. Ms. Schultz, roll call vote, please.
Tia Johnson,
I think you start the other end.
I couldn't hear her. Started the other end. I couldn't hear what her response. I'm sorry.
Start with me.
I'm sorry.
Roll call vote. Start with Sean.
Start again.
Yeah.
Tia Johnson,
You guys started with me last time.
It's so
I don't know if you can hear me or not.
we can do it.
You call it. Just call me first.
Start with a different person. Yeah.
Okay, Greg Schneider,
Aye.
Amy Levy,
Nay.
Megan Miller,
Aye.
Brian Anderson,
Aye.
Brian Nichols,
Nay.
Tia Johnson,
Nay.
and Sean Levy.
Aye.
Motion carried 4-3.
Okay. All right. We are now ready to move forward. Our next meeting date. Our next meeting date is Tuesday, February 6th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. And, oh, thank you. And it's already come and gone. We can't do that again. Our next meeting date is Tuesday, February 6th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. Yep, you will not see me in 2023. That's over. All right. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Amy Levy, seconded by Brian Nichols. During discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right, motion passed unanimously. We'll start at 7:20 in our regular board meeting. All right, thank you.
Recording.
Yeah, I think everything is still. Everybody's in? Okay. All right, I'm going to call to order the January 16th, 2024 regular board meeting at 7:22 p.m. Mrs. Schopp, may I have a roll call, please?
Greg Schneider. Oh, Greg just got kicked out. Oh,
And
here's
Greg
back.
joined again. Move past Greg and come back around. So, there we go.
Greg Schneider,
Present.
Amy Levy. Megan Miller. Present. Brian Anderson.
Here.
Brian Nichols.
Here.
Tia Johnson.
Here.
And Sean Levy.
No, present.
All members are present except Amy Levy.
Okay. First, let me read our public announcement. The Board of Education would like to let our families and viewers know that our regular board meetings are being simultaneously interpreted. You can watch the Spanish interpreted meeting through the link found at the board website under Watch Meetings tab with tonight's date. In order to accommodate this interpretation, we will be monitoring the pace of our meeting to allow time for the interpretation, and I'd like to remind our board members and others speaking to please speak one at a time. Thank you so much for your consideration and understanding. All right, is there a motion for the approval of the agenda?
I'd like to move that we amend the agenda so that the committee and other board reports, which is listed as number 4, comes after the action and discussion items, which is listed at number 5. So people giving presentations can go a little earlier.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion for approval of the agenda, Megan Miller with amendments or change of order. And we have a second by board member Greg Schneider. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. All right. I will lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. Our flag's not here, but it's usually right over there, so we're going to look in that direction towards the exit sign. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Gotta have that improvisation. All right. Public comment, Mrs. Schopp, do we have any public comment this evening?
No, we do not.
No email, no one in the boardroom.
No email and nobody's filled out a card.
All right. So we will be going to student board report. We don't have our student tonight. Board president report, which we'll skip over. And superintendent board report.
Sure. So first of all, thank you all for being here tonight. You know, yesterday we had our Martin Luther King Day celebration over at the Eclipse Center that was actually ran by our Nightingales and pretty much our school district. And I would like to first put a huge thanks out to all of the participants that came out to the Eclipse Center yesterday and participated in our MLK celebration. Additionally, over the weekend, we had a lot of things that were transpiring, and naturally we had to pull on a lot of our facilities and maintenance. It was a very tough weekend for a lot of our families here in the school district of Beloit, but also Beloit at large. One of the things that we pride ourselves in doing is providing services when needed. And I will say, starting as early as 3:30 in the morning on that very cold Saturday morning, Friday morning, we were providing shelter for those who were involved in a very horrific, in this case, fire, and people had to be evacuated to our schools. I'd like to thank the facilities team, Tommy Bricko and course, Mr. Chady, my entire cabinet who assists me in making sure that we had our families in a warm, safe space, and also not only a warm, safe space, but a place where people can come to and where we can provide shelter for the time that was needed. I also like to thank Chartwells, who also provided warm meals for our families on that Friday. There's a lot that goes into being, to running a school district, and none of this works without everybody pulling together. And so I'd like to say thank you to the leadership over this past weekend. I was able to, get here on Friday and just be a part of the conversation. One of the things that I pride myself in is, is lending a helping hand. And so I even got a chance to go out and blow some snow. And so it was one of those opportunities in which, as the district administrator, sometimes you want people to know that you can be involved in anything, really, right? And so I not to bring any like laughter into the room, but I want everybody to know that we are as strong as we are together. And so I'd like to thank everybody who participated over this past weekend and really helping our families see it through the weekend. Unfortunately, as soon as they were released back to their homes, this was a press release as well, a gas leak happened. So those same families had to, kind of re-enter a different space. And so I would just like to, again, send a huge kudos and thanks out to the entire city of Beloit for wrapping their arms around those families that were in need due to this real frigid weather that we've had to experience over this past couple of days. Next, I would like to just put a note into the conversation. One of the things that the district administrator is responsible for is, again, leading the vision. And some of the things that we've been able to do over the past year, I think we just need to note those things every once in a while. I would like to thank all of the staff who has participated and really working real hard with getting some of the things done that we set out to do last year, whether it be, again, raising our attendance and whether it be from, getting our budget back down to a balanced budget, whether it be for increasing our overall scores on our report card. There's been a lot of great things that have transpired over this 1 year of work. And one could argue again that this 1 year of work is a lot, but I know that we together can do much more. And so I wanted to make sure I bring note to some of those things. On top of that, we also, in this conversation, we need to know that we also did a huge transition in our school district. One could argue that, closing 2 schools, reorganizing the whole school district, K-5, from a K-3 to K-5 to 6, 8, 9, 12 conversation was a lot. And again, the work that transpired over this past year to help the entire school district continue to move in that direction. Again, I want to say thank you to everybody who participated and worked alongside of me to get that work done. I thank you, board, for, of course, not only the vote of confidence, but just to make sure the board understands that this work is not easy, and the board work is also not easy. Decisions that you all have to make is noted, and I just want to make sure I thank you all for your dedication to School District of Beloit, as well as a partnership with myself. That's my board report. I didn't want to take up much more time. I wanted to make sure that I just put some of those great things into the atmosphere. I would be remiss if I didn't share a King quote that I've been sharing over the past maybe 2 weeks now. The quote goes as such. It's a long quote. One can say it's a stanza at this point. It's a long stanza, and the stanza goes as, King stated, "If you want to be great, wonderful. If you want to be recognized, wonderful. But recognize that he who is greatest amongst you shall be your servant." That's the new definition of greatness. Is that by giving that definition of greatness, everybody can be great because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and your verb agree to serve. You don't have to know Einstein's theory of relativity to serve. You do not have to know the second theory of thermodynamics to serve. You only have to have a heart full of grace, a soul committed to love, and you can be that servant. And so that's a full stanza from King. I think that's very important to note that in this conversation. A lot of times in this work, it's a thankless work, right? It's a thankless work. We do so much for everybody in this room, teachers, administrators, parents, students. You do so much for everybody, and we forget to say thank you. That level of service, though, is something that has to be born from within and continue throughout. I always say born from within and continue throughout everything that you do in life. And so as a district administrator, that's the way I lead. You know, I lead with high service. You know, I lead with service at the highest level, and I will continue to do that as long as I'm here as a district administrator. And so thank you for this time for the board report.
All right, thank you, Dr. Garrison. Board members, if there are any questions? All right, so we'll move forward. We're now at moving 5A, which is our new 4A, annual financial audit report for year ended.
All right, so good evening, board members. Tonight's presentation is just a recap of our 22-23 district financial audit that was completed, reflect activity as of the end of June 2023. Board policy 684 says upon completion of the audit shall be presented to the board for examination and acceptance. The board received a hard copy earlier this month, an electronic copy earlier this month as well. And Greg Patel, our auditor from Kerber Rose, is here tonight to give you a brief overview and to answer any questions that you may have. Just a real quick audio check with the virtual participants coming through, okay? All right, thank you. All right, I'll turn it over to Greg.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for having me tonight. I have put together some slides that summarize the audit results, and then I have some financial observations after that. You know, along the way, if you have any questions for me, feel free to stop me and ask me, or I can take your questions at the end as well. So starting with the audit results, you have a clean, unmodified audit opinion in the financial statements. And we achieve that primarily through two phases of the audit. We take a look at your internal controls in phase one, surrounding your most significant accounting processes, which include payroll, disbursements, receipts, journal entries. And then if we find any deficiencies, we're required to report those if they rise to the magnitude of a significant deficiency or material weakness. You have one repeat finding, a significant deficiency in relation to financial reporting. And the significant deficiency is the lower of the two findings, and very common. Probably we have 54 public school districts, and probably 50 to 52 of them have this finding in. So pretty rare for our school districts to prepare their own financial statements. I've been in public accounting since October of 2005. We were on GASB statements 43 and 45 at that point. We're now up over 100. So the knowledge and time it takes to understand all of those in the changing GASB world, you know, typically that kind of commitment really outweighs the cost of that commitment outweighs the benefit to preparing those one-off and instead you have Kerber Rose prepare them. We hand it back to Bob and Stephanie and the finance team. They review it, indicate any changes, and then sign the management rep letter indicating they accept responsibility for the content of the financial statements. So not really, I don't want to de-emphasize the finding, but out of all the findings that we have across our clients, it's a very common and not one to really be overly concerned about in my opinion.
So just a restatement, that finding happens when districts hire out someone for the expertise in the accounting and auditing that they don't have in-house.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. But you have a very strong finance team, and so instead of it being a material weakness, it's a significant deficiency. We don't usually have any adjusting entries here because of the strength of your finance team. So the second phase of the audit It involves taking your trial balance and then performing test of transactions to substantiate the amounts that are contained within these financial statements. An example of that would be to take your cash trial balance accounts and reconcile those to your bank statements less any outstanding activities. There were no compliance findings within your federal single audit testing. And that really summarizes the audit results. Do you have any questions for me on the audit results side?
Board members, any questions on the audit? Not seeing any.
Okay.
Anything else?
We'll move on to the financial information then. At the end of the year, June 30th, then you have the general fund has an unassigned fund balance of $9.4 million. That represents just under 10% of your general fund expenditures. And we'll get to the historical perspective of that in a couple of slides. What we always suggest is to have 20 to 25% in your general fund unassigned fund balance. And that's really derived out of the fact that you start your fiscal year on July 1st, and then 6 to 8 months after that, you start to collect your tax levy, which is one of your most significant revenues. And then also your federal and state grant claims lag very similarly to the tax levy. And then even at June 30th, you have a portion of your tax levy that is receivable and then collected in August. So that's really the background under the recommendation of 20 to 25%. If you're below that, you may need to short-term borrow until you start to see the collection of those most significant revenues. The next slide is your budget to actual performance here. And the far left column indicates the original budget adopted. And if we look up about 3 lines from the bottom, net change in fund balance, your original budget anticipated a decrease in general fund balance of $4.4 million. The next column is your final adopted budget, which anticipated a decrease of $4.9 million. And then that third column is the actual performance of the general fund, which was an overall decrease of $2.5 million. So from a budget to actual performance, then that far column captures that, and you had a positive performance of $2.4 million because it decreased less than you really anticipated it decreasing.
So just a restatement. So we were budgeted to close with a $4.4 million deficit, but almost $5 million in the deficit.
Yes.
So we approved the budget.
Yes.
But we ended the year not $5 million down.
Correct. About half of that, $2.5 million down.
So we achieved through our budgeting and actions, half of the deficit was erased through our actions.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So from a historical perspective, our next slide, the left bar captures your unassigned fund balance for the past 5 years, or the black bar. And then the purple bar indicates your general fund expenditures for the past 5 years. And then we put that into perspective as a percentage on the next slide. And you can see at the end of the year represents that just below 10% of your general fund expenditures in unassigned fund balance. So certainly trending lower than our recommendations. Even from a bond rating standpoint, 20 to 30% is considered good. Above 30% is considered excellent. So nothing that we haven't had a discussion over the course of the last couple of audits. And I know that the board, as well as the finance team, is aware of it. next slide then represents your minimum fund balance policy. And you changed that in 2021 to 14% of your general fund expenditures. And you can kind of see the trend then on the red line indicates the unassigned fund balance percent of expenditures. And then the green line indicates the total fund balance of expenditures. You know, the main components of your general fund balance, you also have a restricted portion for self-insurance. And that's just over $2 million, that and your common school library funds. So, with that, do you have any questions for me regarding the financial information?
Board members, any hands? All right, not seeing any. Okay, I think we're done. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So where we're at for 5A, we do need a motion to approve our audit.
I'll make a motion to approve our audit as presented.
I'll second.
All right. Motion by board member Brian Anderson with a second by board member Megan Miller. Is there any discussion?
Just thanks to our financial team.
Okay. It's important to have one. Yeah.
That's what
It makes a difference. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed signify by saying nay. All right, motion passed unanimously. And we're on to our next item, BMHS Academy update.
Thank you.
All right.
Come on up. So before we get started, I would like to say that, you know, our academy work is ongoing. It's something that we pride ourselves with here in the school district of Beloit. A few years ago, the school district went to the academy model, and this academy model has been in place for now a little over 3 years. You know, my hopes is that the academy model will continue to grow, not only continue to grow, but continue to thrive in our school district. You know, it's one thing to grow and it's another thing to thrive, and that's kind of what I'm looking for in this conversation. Upon taking the job here as superintendent, we had to kind of upstart this conversation again with our partners. I'm happy to note that in our last visit, they gave us, pretty strong recommendations as it pertains to we're doing a great job of keeping things moving forward with our academy model. I'd like to thank Mr. Schneider, who's also a participant on our, I like to call it our academy team. I know he's one of the board members that represents the board, along with our rest of the academy, I like to call it the academy team that participates with this. And this is members of our community, which includes Drew Pennington. I'm not going to go through a list of all the names, but just know that there's a lot of people that has participated in the academy model and want to continue to see this grow. And again, not just grow, but thrive here in the school district. With that being stated, I'm going to turn it over to the teaching and learning team, and they're going to give a brief presentation on the BMHS Academy update. I think it's very important that the board is kept abreast of the work that happens in the academies, but also the continued partnerships that we have with Fort NGL. I do know we have a guest here with us tonight, Star Herman. Thank you for being with us, and again, thank you for your participation tonight. Star actually got on a little early at our teaching and learning committee meeting, and so Star is welcome back to the space for now. And again, the academy work is ongoing and it's continuous, and that's something that I really want everyone to also be mindful of. Again, if there's questions that comes with this presentation from the board, we would love to take them, but please understand that again, the academy work is ongoing and it's continuous. And so it's not a finality to the work, it's just a continuous improvement of the work as we move forward. And so I'll turn it over to Mrs. Mortek for the presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank the team that is here tonight that will be presenting. It's a cross-departmental effort. So we have Deb Krause, Emily Pels, and Jeff Stenroof. That's a mouthful. And so that's a combination of administration and work that's being done across the high school and the teaching and learning department. I'd also like to let those of you know that Deb put together some really nice folders that help to provide information around our academies and our one-pagers and so forth. And thank you to the communications department for all of the branding that has gone into that as well. So the board members that are virtual with us will hold on to those folders for you so that when we see you in person next time, we can hand those off to you. But again, those are great talking pieces when people have questions about our academies, and they help to just really solidify some of the work that we've been doing. Tonight's presentation attempts to frame for you where we were and where we're going, where we are and where we're going for next steps for next year. So I'm going to kick it off to the team. And again, thank you everyone for all of your hard work towards the transformation that's happening in our high school.
Well, thank you for having us here. We're really excited to be able to talk with you about our accomplishments and our achievements over the past year with our academy work and implementing our academy model. And so first off, I'd just like to always start with reinforcing the why behind the work, especially paying special attention to our tagline there at the bottom of the slide, first and foremost for our students. Because really that's what we're centered in. We're centered in creating the very best opportunities for our students to excel. This means in the classroom, this means in the community, and this means beyond that, wherever their dreams and their futures take them. What we really want to do is ensure that students have the most opportunities possible to engage in readiness activities and experiences that will get them prepared for careers, post-secondary education, and anywhere where they want to go. And you can see, all of the bullets on the slide that really outline the why of our work, but really we're looking to positively impact student engagement and achievement and attendance, student work habits and their skills, as well as their content knowledge and their college and career planning.
So in your folders today, you have one-pagers for each of our academies. Our freshman academy, I actually had to run copies of that today because so many of them were given out at Expo that I didn't have the shiny papers anymore. There were some left in our office, but I didn't want to take the last 7 copies. So you guys got some copies made by me today. So each one of the one-pagers, though, basically does the same thing. It gives you a little bit of a summary on what each academy is, addresses our pathways that we have. We did reduce our pathways down from 31 to 14 over the course of the last year, and then it highlights some of the experiences that students will get. For example, all of our freshmen are guaranteed a college fair, and that was part of Expo this year. So every single one of our freshman classes went down during Expo to go to the college fair, and our freshman teachers did a really nice job of preparing our students to go down there. We had questions that we wanted students to ask, and they needed to go and fill that out, and then they turned it into their teachers at the end so that they had some talking points. The colleges that were there were really pleased with that and had said that our students had some really good questions. And then we do our freshman seminar for all of our freshmen, and things that we'll be working towards will be the graduation portfolio, talking about branding ourselves, not only just academies, but ourselves as individuals, and then freshmen are exposed to guest speakers and have the opportunity to have some people come and speak with them. Moving on to our Bach Academy, that is Business, Arts, Communication, and Hospitality. And our Bach Academy is probably the most challenging academy for us to build, because we're doing something that's different and unique in our Bach Academy that many Ford NGL schools don't do, and that is that we wanted to create pathways that included and recognized the talent in our music, performing arts, and our visual arts pathways. So those are not common pathways. In fact, our pathways are being used as exemplars for some other Ford NGL communities who've been trying to build these. But that does indicate that we have a lot of work to do and a lot of leadership to do along the way. We also have business, marketing, communications, and entrepreneurship. Our hospitality pathway is also one that we are in conversation with Black Hawk Tech. Is the best way to do that. Black Hawk Tech recently introduced a hospitality management pathway. So we're working to align that pathway so that our students who are coming in who want to run a hotel, want to run a restaurant, want to own their own food truck, all of those things can be addressed within that pathway and tie right into what Black Hawk Tech does, and they have an opportunity to earn that credit then. So our next pathway is our academy is our HES Academy, Health, Human, and Education Services. We just worked this summer with a group of teachers in our science department and with Kelly Groru to reimagine and revision our health sciences pathway to, again, align with classes at Black Hawk Tech where they can earn some credit, but also to align and to be a broader pathway. So students, whether they want to work in a lab or whether they want to be a doctor or a chiropractor or a nurse, they have those pathways built, or those courses will lead to any of those pathways. So we also have a rock solid education pathway. Our teacher, Rachel Shepard, does an amazing job preparing students. We had over 70 students last year leave the high school with at least one education certification. So that's really cool. And those students can either walk into Black Hawk Tech or into UW Whitewater with credits towards an education degree. Our human services pathway is really broad. We want it to be broad because human services, you know, when you're dealing with people, it is very broad in how you want to address it. So whether you want to be a social worker or a psychologist, whether you want to be a funeral director or a hairstylist, this pathway is designed to give you the tools and the foundation to make sure that you know how to work with people as you get into that career. Lastly, we have our PACMES Academy. That is a mouthful to say, but we'll go through it. It is public service, automotive, construction, manufacturing, engineering, and science. So our teachers in that academy are working really hard to build up. You'll see the pathways that we have there, from advanced manufacturing to engineering to public service and leadership. Construction, engineering is where a lot of our sciences are, and it does kind of overlap with our health sciences as well, so science is kind of seen in both of those. But right now we have a really good group of teachers working together to start doing some interdisciplinary work across construction and geometry and math, and that's been a really amazing thing to watch. So it's fun. Mr. Wagner and Ms. Kelly have worked hard to really get that thing going. So we're doing great. PACMES has speakers many Fridays over the course where students go opposite their lunch and see those speakers as well.
So we can't talk about the work of academies without drawing attention to our portrait of a graduate, because that is the North Star that exemplifies the characteristics and the qualities that we would like all of our students to be able to demonstrate when they graduate Floyd Memorial High School. But something different that we're doing now, so when we first created the portrait of a graduate, we would use it to sort of talk about the work of the academies and talk about what we would like our students to demonstrate. But now we're really trying to put our portrait into action. So we have worked as academy teams to really identify what each of these characteristics looks like, sounds like, feels like, and what a student would have to do to really show demonstration of each of these characteristics. And then teachers are recognizing students when they do demonstrate those characteristics And eventually, they'll do it to the extent where students will be able to create a portrait of a graduate portfolio based on these characteristics. And the portrait will gather, or I'm sorry, the portfolio will gather artifacts that our seniors will sort of defend before they graduate. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on in the presentation, but I did want to front load that. Okay, so this is the roadmap that we follow in the implementation of our academy system. And we're very proud to say that we've worked through all of the mile markers pretty much. Most of the work that we're doing right now lives in phase 4 and phase 5. More heavily in 4 than 5, but we are really starting to live more than 5 moving forward. So phase 4 really focuses on the work that we do with our community partners to support and enhance the experience of our students through the academy system. It means that we're really working together to determine what our efforts are to continuously improve the implementation of our academy. And it's also engaging with the Ford NGL network and community and learn from one another. And then in phase 5, that really focuses on systems and structures that have been created to support our academy model so that it's sustaining. And that is what we're seeing. We're seeing our systems sustaining and become kind of the way we do things instead of the idea that it's an initiative or something like that. It's ingrained in our school culture, and that just becomes the way of how we do things. It also is where teachers and others are taking on leadership roles to really think about the continuous improvement process and student learning experiences and create experiences that really align with the academy model. And then lastly, it really focuses on collaboration with the Ford NGL network, where we're sharing best practices with one another. So we're going to talk about where we've been. And we have a whole list of things, as you can see on the slide. But the items that are bolded are the ones that we're going to kind of focus on. So one of the things we're very proud of is the fact that we have designated our Academy Master Plan, and we are made official. We're officially part of the Ford NGL network because we met that threshold, and we were able to celebrate that actually last year at our expo. So we had a ceremony that followed up with the expo that kind of showcased all of our work as a school district, but also the work of the community too. So we got to do that together, which was really awesome. We created guaranteed work-based learning experiences by grade level. So all of our freshmen will be exposed to or be involved in a college and career fair. That's our expo. We create that situation for them. All of our sophomores will participate in practice interviews. All of our juniors will participate in a job shadow or a college visit. And then finally, our seniors will have their portrait of a graduate portfolio that they will defend. So students will work on that portfolio all throughout their high school career, but it's kind of like that capstone experience for our seniors. We also identified essential components of the senior portfolio, which we're going to talk about here in just a little while. And then we intentionally connected students with relevant work-based learning experiences. So for example, we refined our co-ops to align more with the Career Academy pathways. And when students have a desire to, have to leave school, for example, for half a day to go to work, we integrate that into our co-ops so that we can progress monitor to the extent that students are actually learning the skills that they need to be successful on a job, and they're earning credit at the same time. Okay, and where we're going is next.
All right, so similar to the slide that Emily just talked about, there are some items bolded here, and this is where we're going or in the midst of being there. So developing curriculum through the lens of each academy that is interdisciplinary and project-based. So an example I gave of that was our PACMES Academy right now. Mr. Wagner and Ms. Kelly have worked together. So, and they're teaching through the lens. So Ms. Kelly has gone down to the construction classroom with her math students, and they've seen what they're doing, building trusses and you know, talking about square footage for drywall and all of these other things. And then Mr. Wagner and his classes have built trusses that are now in Ms. Kelly's classroom. And so they've used that to kind of verify the math behind the trusses and why they work. In fact, Ms. Kelly went down and talked, they had a student from her class talk to Mr. Wagner in his class about the trig behind why the trusses had the angles that they had. So it was that conversation. And then what Ms. Kelly and Mr. Wagner have also done is they've shared, well, this is the vocabulary I use in construction. Well, this is the vocabulary we use in math. So now they're trying to use it interchangeably so the students know and understand that vocabulary. That's one example of a really high level place where we're at as far as interdisciplinary. But that's not the only place. We have all of our freshman teachers are taking their students on walking field trip in the next to begin the next semester, because in their English class they have to do some research behind what their best choice or what the different choices are for after high school and the pros and cons of each type of choice. So they're going to a variety of different classrooms in our CTE areas, and they're going to talk to the teachers and talk to them about the different options for what can I do after high school if I want to do something in this area. So we're doing walking field trips. This portrait of a graduate thing that I will talk about in a little bit too is something where we have talked in all of our classes last year. We took 6 weeks at the end of the year to talk about each element of the portrait of a graduate and directly instruct. And as second semester ramps up, we'll be going back to this, but now we have these two. So that will be a way to do that as well. And I'll talk more about that in the next slide. We are in the midst of developing advisory boards. I'm starting with the PACMES Academy because we have some pretty solid relationships already built with PACMES, and then we'll be moving into the HES Academy and the Bach Academy for advisory boards that will really just tell us, are we on track for what you guys need? And we're also going to be able to talk in the advisory boards about, here's what we're doing and here's what we need. Do you have any suggestions? Do you have any ways to help and support us in that? So it'll be very much a give and take and a cooperative effort with those boards. We will be implementing the Portrait of a Graduate portfolio that we'll talk about on the next slide. And then we will be, I'm working with Jeff Stenrus to figure out ways to best monitor the outcomes that we have for our data dashboard as far as like work-based learning, industry credentials, dual credits. You'd think that would be really easy, but it's not as far as figuring out how to track it. So we're working together on that. Next, we have the Portrait of a Graduate there in our final portfolio presentation artifacts. And I've linked in this presentation just a summary that's a little bit more than what you see on the bullet points there if you want to go into that. But the bullet points are what I'm going to be talking about here. So our seniors will have a presentation eventually that we will ask them to do, and there'll be a slide that introduces themselves, portrait milestones, so 1 to 2 slides per element. So by per element, I mean each of these 6 elements on the Portrait of a Graduate. They will have slides that demonstrate their best work for each of these elements, and then they'll be encouraged to support that with pictures and with conversations to basically prove that when they walk out, they are what we say they are. They'll have a break page where they can celebrate all the things that they're doing beyond this or including this. They'll have a break page, and then they'll have a summary where the personal narrative is going to ask them, it's not only their why, but it's going to ask them to compare where they were as freshmen, where they are now as seniors, and how they've gotten there, and to talk about their growth, and to give kind of a 1-year, this is my future plan. So to have a plan in place for that, and then they'll have an opportunity to do some question and answers with the people that they are defending that with. So but this is our teacher's way of saying to a student, you know, I listened to you when you got that wrong and you were talking with your partner and really trying to understand what that is an example of an amazing fearless leader. And so we want to be really deliberate in our teachers recognizing students. This is for those bright stars. It's not for you showed up to school today, but it's for you showed up and this is all the things that you did. So teachers will be recognizing students when they really stand out, and then the students have the opportunity to write on this, what they did and how they earned it. So the teachers aren't writing it, the students are writing it and reflecting on it. All right, and so going further, phase 5, Jeff has worked with me, Dr. Garrison, Teresa has been at Career Tech talking about ways we can involve our middle schools with Career Tech and understanding what the career academies are like when they come there. So we are excited to continue our work with Career Tech and to build opportunities for our middle school students to really understand what's available to them, because a lot of times our high school students say, I had no idea. So we'd like them to have an idea before they actually get to high school. We are in the midst of establishing a healthcare pathway that's in collaboration with both Lloyd Health Systems, Black Hawk Technical College, and Mercy Health Systems, so that we can really delve into what our students need and are saying that they want, including a CNA course and our medical terminology course. We are going to continue to work with Black Hawk Tech on our hospitality pathway so that it aligns with their associate's degree program, and hopefully our students can walk away with 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 courses worth having done in the high school. We are in the midst of searching for a hospitality teacher right now, but we hope that we can find someone who's as eager as we are to get that going. Our BOC visual and performing arts pathways are being used as models for the Fort NGL communities, so that they understand that how we built them and how they might be able to build them as well. And then also our expo is being recognized as an exemplar for other Fort NGL communities, and we actually have an article going in their most recent newsletter about our most recent expo.
Okay, so on this slide, it encapsulates a lot of our positive work that we've done and things that we can celebrate. And you can see there are many things that are represented up there, and there's also many things that, the slide wouldn't fit. So, but in short, what I'm saying is, if you look at all of the celebrations up there, all of the statistics, the data that we have to back up our celebrations, what you'll see is that we have an increase in our attendance rates. We're increasing student achievement. We're increasing the number of students that are participating in CTE courses. We're increasing the number of students completing work-based learning opportunities. We're increasing the number of students earning industry certifications. We're expanding our community, business, and higher education partnerships. We're increasing the opportunities for students to participate in rigorous and relevant college readiness experiences, and much, much more. So in closing, we are just very, very proud of the work that we have done around the academies of Beloit. And we're very excited for where the work is going to continue to go in the future, because we know it's what's best for our students. So thank you very much. And at this time, we'll entertain any questions.
All right, board members, any questions?
Oh, I do, but I'm not.
Couple. Go ahead, Megan. I think you can start first.
I mostly just have a whole bunch of compliments, but I just wanted to, I want to like amplify the proudness. So I remember in June of 2019, when we first sat down with some administrators at the high school and Ms. Herman, and we got this phenomenal presentation. And it's really cool to see, like, here we are going into 2024, like, here we are, we're like right on that cusp of phase 5, like right on track. So even with COVID and everything else that has sort of been a challenge, I love how this has been such a committed, thriving piece of our district. And it's really got a longer shelf life than a lot of other initiatives, right, that come and go, and popular culture and things like that in education. So I'm just like really proud of our district and all the work that our teachers and our administrators have done to see this through since 2019. So that's phenomenal. No, for sure. I wanted to compliment also, I love like the concept of the portfolio model and like its ability to like build student agency and autonomy around something that's a vision. And so I in no way want to downplay the importance of college and career readiness, but I want to throw in another word that I hear when I see this, which is like community readiness. because like having a student identify with these values, like this is such a beautiful document. This is the coffee mug that I drink out of at work, and I try to, like, it's my favorite because I'm just, it's such a beautiful testament to the work that our district and community have done together and continue to do together. And I just think what a cool experience. I have 3 kids in our district. I have one who's going to be a high schooler in about 5 seconds when I cough and blink and look. And I love that this is what she's going to be walking into. And just like as our kids continue to sort of define themselves and who am I in this community and who am I in this world, we've like laid out such a beautiful guiding path for them. And it's just very powerful work, and it's unique work in our community, in our area. And I just really want to praise everything that all of you and our community partners have done to make this a continuous part of who we are. My only question was, I'm curious because I know dual credit is like weirdly this like best kept secret that nobody wants to be a secret. That's just like part of dual credit and its experience kind of everywhere. And you know, having worked at Blackhawk Tech with dual credit, it's like you can walk around with like a bell and be like, look, we have this thing, and people are like, what? I've never heard. It's like it's a hard thing to stick for some reason. So I'm wondering, has there been any consideration into doing like a special, like an honor for students, maybe like a court of graduation for kids who have like participated in dual credit to sort of like increase that visibility and popularity? And I say this too as a former AP teacher, like absolutely nothing wrong with our AP program. It's wonderful. Also, dual credit is an equally wonderful college opportunity for students. And I think it's just as like laudable, right, to do dual credit as it is to do AP. So what are some thoughts we have around that?
So actually, we've talked about that multiple times. Some things that we have thrown around is to kind of encompass all of the different ways students can rise to rigor, is to have courses for pathway completers.
Yeah.
So if you complete your pathway, because if you complete your pathway, you have gone either into a dual credit course, you have earned some kind of industry certification, or you've completed an AP course. So that seems like if you've done that, that's a really good way to honor the rigor involved in any of those and understand that each student has chosen that pathway for a reason, and we want to uphold all of those accomplishments as equally important accomplishments, because that means that that student is on track to do what they've decided they want to do, and they're ready.
We've also, I was just going to say too that we've also done a lot of work around refining our pathways. And one of the things that we intentionally did when we did that work was to ensure that each pathway does lead to either college credit, whether that be through a 4-year college or a technical college, and or industry certification. So too, when students are planning out their 4-year program, they see how that their choices articulate to either college credit and or industry certification. So that's another way that we elevate the importance of it.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to point out was the industry recognized credentials are high level credentials for our students. And sometimes they can get the dual credit and the credential in the same class. Sometimes they get one or the other because of circumstance they don't meet it, but they're equally as important as going out there into the job market or whether it be onto someplace else. We've got some amazing teachers right now that are pushing this. If one of the stats that you saw was we are 50% for our industry recognized credentials over the previous ones, and we're quite high, as I presented to the board before, and they're wanting to do even more. So they're recognizing that it isn't just college credit, there are other things, and again, to honor all of those aspects of whatever the student chooses, and they could have multiples, which is equally as important.
In addition, on our pathway document, the one that the students see when they register, we list not only the pathway courses, but underneath it, other suggested courses to support their efforts that they go. And one of the things that is highlighted is there are dual credit classes and their opportunity for either dual credit or industry recognized certifications. So anything that earns college credit in one way or shape or form is there and listed and highlighted for them.
One of the comments that I heard from, as you see, I sat here. They do the bulk of the work and lead this effort over there. I'm very happy to help support it, and I work in conjunction with them in different ways. But it was that the academies are not something that that you see, you pick, and you an academy. It's a way of doing, and it's a way of becoming, and that's where we're going to. Is that is my goal would be that I could walk down a hallway in 2 or 3 years and talk to any student, any teacher, and ask them what academy they're in. The kids will know. The student will be able to explain why, what they've chosen. The teacher will be able to identify some pieces of the academies and what their, what the strengths are of that. Because it becomes a way of, it's just how we do it. And we're getting there. And that's what the exciting piece is.
No, I really appreciate that. I think it also just like speaks to like having an asset-based way for students, like, I'm sure as a former math teacher, right? Like, oh, I'm not a math student, but it's so nice to be able to like turn that around and just say like, no, like this is who you are, and like build on like all those positives. And so I think it's so important to just recognize like everybody is like has that access to like rigor and high achievement regardless of whether it's AP or like whatever, right? I just think that's a wonderful opportunity for kids. But I also wanted to compliment the shift, the mathematics piece that you're talking about. Like that's like cutting edge, rebooted shift in mathematics, right? Like the flexible use and everything like that. It's way ahead. I'm just so proud of our district. Thanks for sharing all that.
Any other board members with questions? All right. I have a couple. I should kind of ask you a little fast on the answering though. I'm just gonna I have a little experience with academies, and I know each Fort NGL community is a little bit different in their implementation, how they're going about it. But I'm just trying to understand where we're at in Beloit and some of the things that we're thinking about. So you kind of mentioned already first with the 31 to 14 pathways, like that refinement. Is it the goal, like in the end, like you have your freshmen come in, they're in freshman seminar, or does it look at the vast offerings that are in Beloit Memorial, that they're looking towards, I want to become a high school social studies teacher. And so they understand the preparation in high school they need to take for that.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So then we're talking about like completing pathways, like as it's implemented in Racine, we'll have freshman seminar and then a level 1 pathway, level 2, level 3 pathway. Are you moving towards that, or where are you at in that process?
We have that. We have, each pathway has level 1 courses, level 2 and level 3, and 1 credit per level. So sometimes that's 1 course, sometimes it's 2 courses, depending on the level. So, but yes.
But they know the sequence of,
Yep,
if
they
they need
have
to
a
take 2
document.
half credits and, okay.
Yes.
Yep,
Gotcha.
it is all laid out
All
there.
right, so when you get to the scheduling, and having done scheduling at Memorials, the whole thing.
We're having fun with it.
Yeah, that's fun. But then trying to schedule academies.
Yeah.
I know sometimes you get to that space to like prescribe and reduce, as we talked about, that you're going to take these 3 classes or if it's 6 classes, because these are the ones that lead to the pathway that you're in. But then also sometimes you got to get to that reduction, because I know like at the high school we have all of our elective courses, which is a great thing as teachers have developed that autonomy. But at the same time, you got to have some compression in the scheduling so students are streamlined and resource use. How is that part going? Because I know that's a cultural shift.
We're all nodding our heads because we're in the middle of all of that. So I'll let them elaborate on it, but yeah,
I
you're
would say
right on.
intentionality
Okay.
is the word we use.
Okay.
And looking at that, again, being very cognizant of, does this fit into a pathway, or is it a global class, and how does it support what's going on? It's a nice shiny and it's wonderful, but it doesn't maybe fit the structure. We may have to take a look at sunsetting that course and moving along. So again, we've had lots of meetings at various levels about looking at that, again, with intentionality to move our academies along as far as they can be.
Yeah.
So intentionality into like in that course curriculum process of what's coming up and course offering guides.
Yeah.
Decide,
Yeah.
what's replaced.
And when we attended the Fort NGL Superintendent conference that was hosted actually in Racine, Dr. Garrison and I did, we met with other superintendents and talked about how one superintendent called some of those boutique classes and how, where is that relevant in some of those courses, if
Very
there's high
popular with the
interest.
kids and the teachers, yeah.
Exactly. And so how you're doing that transformative work in a way that honors individuals and also stays true to that model that we have said that we are committed to.
Gotcha. So then like the next question kind of goes into like the district level support with the data. I know we have switched our systems, but like when you start tracking like level 1 course completion and all the different metrics that the high school be responsible for, but that sometimes in the past as a district hasn't been there, and we need a whole system. Where are we at that process of
Sure.
the data points that they'll need to keep and the ability of the district to provide support for that?
Sure. So Jeff, you want to talk a little bit about the work that you and
Yeah,
Deb are working on?
so there are some things that need to happen for data reporting for Perkins, CTE things already. And as we've talked about the pathways, and growing out our dashboard, what are things that tell our story? And knowing that dual credit opportunities, credentials, pathway completers, those things are all important. How do we collect them? Even the number of, time, talent, and treasures that we get from our communities, how do we honor that? And some of that is, there's not a nice way. When I was at Fort NGL Leadership in Arizona, I went to a session that was specifically about that. Again, a couple of schools did it, so we're learning on what that process is, but realizing these are things that are important to tell our story that we want to. Again, work in progress, and as we develop, and we have a lot of things. Skyward gives us a lot of information, but there are other things that are not, and how do we make that manageable?
All right, so you said it before I did, Skyward and Infinite Campus, different student information management systems, but knowing as you deal with the community of Fort NGL schools and districts, that they might be using different information management systems. So their ad hoc reporting or their built-in reports, are you finding that you have the support in our information management system, or are you?
So right now we're settling in with Skyward, but we partnered with a company that we've been working through this year called Otis. They were recommended at the Skyward conference. We did a 1-year contract because we wanted to, you get a sales pitch and we listed some other ones. And we're right now, I would say, at a turning point to see if this is what we want. Otherwise, if it's not, we will potentially look for a different provider next year. We've been meeting with them regularly to build out dashboards to sync our SIS with their third-party system, which is a lot of back-end work when you understand all of that that's involved. So there's been a ton of just back-end work, but sometimes those reports come out the way that you want them. Ultimately, we want them to be user-friendly. And so that's kind of the place that we're at right now is this the product that we want to continue to extend contracts with or not?
Are we moving towards like NCAC certification, implementation of NSOPs, or is that where our?
It's a long-term goal.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll just start asking about like, are you dealing with things like purity, common planning, and scheduling for the academy?
So Mr. Bosco, Tony Bosco, and I have been in conversation with some of the people from Racine about scheduling pieces. I've connected with the Academy and Transformation Coordinator from Racine, and we are planning to meet with Rockford, who has academies, not Fort NGL, meeting later this spring. Deb and Emily and some of the people from their folks to talk about, share ideas, questions, what do you do, scheduling, data gathering.
Right, so I think there's some in Freeport also.
Yeah.
All right, so I know that community, there's people around us. As far as like different pathways of thought, how are we handling like, in some districts, like people talking about like AP pathways, just recognize that sometimes like kids are in high school and that's all they want to take. That's the way they want to build their schedules. But like as you mentioned before, with the music and visual arts, that there's that we're providing some models for other communities. I know it's a little bit different. Sometimes schools have multiple systems, like there's multiple schools in a district. It's a little unique sometimes when you're a one high school district to how you build things out. And then lastly, there's two more parts. Our partnership with the Greater Beloit Economic Development Corporation as our convening organization. As I've observed it in Racine and see how they're working with theirs, here in Beloit, there's other places, but Beloit Memorial is the main thing. So getting our community to support those advisory boards and that industry participation, but then as you mentioned, the workplace learning opportunities and getting people out. How is that partnership, and where are we in that process of getting people to have placements for students?
So
almost like a weekend for kids, so they can sign up and take these opportunities.
right now, pretty much any student we have that wants a job shadow, a co-op, a work-based learning opportunity, we have it. And it's the support from GBEDC and the Salem Manufacturing Alliance and Visit Beloit and the Chamber. It's been incredible. I have not been told no ever in any of the requests that I've asked. And most of the time it's, what do you need?
Okay.
And sometimes I don't have answers yet because I'm not quite sure where we're going next, but they have been incredibly supportive. They recognize how important it is for our students to understand, for our community to grow. Our students need to understand what there is here for them.
Right.
And as people who grew up here, you don't always see that.
Right, make you want to come
when
back.
you're growing.
Right.
And so, you know, if you've watched our Craftsman with Character video from last year, or if you've talked to our students, they don't even realize all of the opportunities that are here. But as we have our expos and we get more students into our community and, you know, and experiencing all that there is, they're excited about what their options are. Their parents are excited about what their options are as well. So
Yeah, I'll give a positive. I was, you know, as a family situation, we had a loved one in the past. So I had to go out to the cemetery and make the grave purchase. And Bob, who works in the city office, is a part of Craftsman Character. And he happened to say, "Oh, you're on the school board," and that always goes a couple different ways, right? Because sometimes people think Kevin Levy's my dad, he's my cousin, and then other times people say you're on the school board, you don't know how that's going to go. But he mentioned his participation in Craftsman with Character, so it was good. Even that moment, I was enlightened in a downtime in life that the positive work of the district is happening all over our city, and people are enthused and excited to be a part of that. So I do want to say thank you for that. Those are questions that I had, so I'm good.
And did you see that in our celebrations, our ECE kids did participate in the GBEDC study on childcare? Just lots of cool stuff. They think about us a lot, and they include us.
Yeah, it's positive, like you said, that you haven't been told no, and people are asking what can they do.
Yeah.
Like I said, you know, for me, it was the high school. I got to be here the rest of my life. I'll be working in the district, doing something in the district. And I think that based on the positive experience that many of our students have, but like you said, getting them out to the community and seeing the other opportunities that there are, so people feel like they can come home and continue to contribute. I'm really thankful for your work in that effort. All right. Any other board questions? And then if not, we're ready to move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. To see open enrollment space determination.
So I'll kick this conversation off as well. One of the things that we have to do on an annual basis is approve open enrollment seats for the school district. I asked Ms. C. Beavers, our director of executive director of pupil services, to join me on this presentation. It's not a real long presentation. It's really something that, again, that we do annually. There's some small changes that we will make as it pertains to, and not to give you the, well, I can give you the end of the book conversation right now. Typically, we've always had open enrollment seats available for regular education. This year, we are proposing that we cut back on our open enrollment seats for special education, and it's simply due to us not being able to staff our special education seats at the elementary level. Our high school and our middle school levels do have opportunities in space, but we do not have that necessary space in our elementary level. And so Mrs. Beavers will, again, pretty much that was the high-level overview of the conversation. And for time's sake, that's the gist of the overall presentation. But I did want Mrs. Beavers to kind of go over some real brief numbers, and again, just some of the historical data over time here in the school district. And of course, we'll take your questions. I would prefer to have your questions by slide so that when we get to the end, we can be right at the end. And so that's just my thoughts for now, and I'll turn it over to Mrs. Beavers to walk us through the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Eric is also online supporting me. if he needs to jump in. So just a couple brief overviews for anybody in the room or tuning in on just basics of open enrollment. Open enrollment is a practice that allows any parent to apply for a spot in a district other than the district in which they reside. There's a regular application period and there's an alternative application period. The regular application period is for this year is from February 5th to April 30th of 2024. That's an online process, and that is an application for the following school year. So that would be for 24-25. There's also an alternative application process if you don't meet that window deadline, and that begins July 1st. Of 2024, and that would be for the upcoming 24-25 school year. So like Dr. Garrison said, you did a really nice job of clip notes. Thank you. We have an obligation to allocate seats in January at a board meeting. It's got to be in our board minutes, which is why we're here tonight. And so we've got to designate both general and special education seats available for next school year, and we must have that referenced in our policy. And at the policy committee, we recently updated policy 424, and so we've got that language in there. And then lastly, the criteria that we decide upon must be applied consistently, so that in the case that if a dispute may arise, that we were consistent and that decisions weren't made arbitrarily or unreasonably. So this next slide is really in focusing on special education seat allocation. And so if we make a decision to limit the number of space available, we have to determine the criteria. And that's what I'm going to explain in the next slide. And again, it's really important that the criteria is outlined and very clear so that we can implement it and follow it exactly and consistently, like I said, in case there is a dispute. And then it's very important to note that there are no state or federal special education caseload requirements. So this slide that I'm showing right now is only specific to special education seat allocation. So I'm going to talk through it slowly. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. So you'll see that the first column is the buildings, and underneath the buildings, we just have occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech and language. Those three therapies are the only three areas that are regulated by state statute in regards to numbers. So 45, 45, and 35 that you see right to the right of those therapies are regulated by state statute. The school buildings, those caseload sizes are, those are determined by the district, and the way we determine those is we look at not only numbers, but we also look at workload. And what I mean by that is we look at the number of students, but workload is talking about the number of students and programs like IEPs that a teacher might be managing in addition to the related service providers that they're working with, the paraeducators that they're managing, the paperwork that goes along with those number of students, and then the IEP and evaluation meetings. So that's how we come up with the caseload size, and we use that as an average at those grade levels. The next column to the right is the current staffing that we have right now. And when you look at those numbers, that's current staffing, not current FTE allocated to building. So there might be, at Beloit Memorial High School, we might have 16 special ed FTE allocated to that building, but right now we only have 15 positions filled. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. And so in order to get capacity, we took caseload size and multiplied it by the number of case managers or therapists. That's how we landed on capacity. And then projected enrollment is our current number of students with disabilities in each building, padded by between 7 and 10 additional seats. And the reason why we got 7 and 10 is when looking at historical data, that's about how many new students we get moving into each building during a typical school year. So that's padded. So then when you look at capacity minus projected enrollment, you get the available number of seats.
And you've got to base this on your current staffing, not how many staff you have allocated. So are there any questions before I move on from this slide?
So just understanding the slide with the capacity versus our projected enrollment, we can accept 42 students for placement at Boyd Memorial, 17 at Aldridge, 4 at Fruzen, 3 at Merrill, and 16 in our physical therapy program.
You've got it.
And the pinkish red slides are, we're in negative capacity.
Correct.
So we cannot accept students who had those needs through open enrollment.
Correct.
In placement in our special education programs.
Well, that's going to be our recommendation.
That's gonna, right, so that, right.
But you got it. Okay. Okay. So you just got the motion.
Okay.
So our recommendation then would be to not limit general education seats. So we would have unlimited. We would accept any application coming through for general education. However, if the student is in need of special education or related services, the numbers are to the right there, what we would recommend. Just like you said, Board President Levy, 42 at 912, 21 at 68, 3 at the elementary, and then 16 physical therapy, and then we would have to not make any available in OT or speech and language because we don't have the capacity to manage that. One piece of information that I did not share at the committee meeting was that historically, when looking at the open enrollment numbers for special education, we've had in 21-22 there were 17, in 22-23 there were 14, and currently there are 5 out of our total open enrollment of students with disabilities. So I didn't, and then when you look at them over grade levels, having a very limited number in elementary didn't concern us, and the number of seats available in secondary would support our historical numbers.
As the motion reads, you need us to read it how?
Exactly the way it's written.
Grades 9 through 12, all unlimited, regular, and just, okay, gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any questions, board members? Okay, now would someone like to make a motion for our open enrollment space determination?
Sure, I'd like to move that. Oh,
Okay.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, by all means, you got it.
Okay. I move to approve unlimited regular education enrollment seats and the following seat allocation for special education enrollments for the 2024-25 school year. Grades 9 through 12, 42 positions. Grades 6 through 8 is 21. Grades 4K through 5 is 3. Physical education is 16. Occupational therapy is 0. Speech and language is 0.
All right, just an amendment to your physical therapy, Mr. Schneider.
Oh, sorry. Yep, physical therapy.
Okay.
I'll second.
We'll make that correction. That's the motion. Megan Miller is providing a second. Is there any discussion? So just as a survey, we have open enrollment, which are students coming into the district, but because of our program needs and our allocations, we're in general, we'll take every kid who comes, who meets our criteria, not expelled or anything like that. But for students with identified learning disabilities, the only reason we're turning them away is because our staffing can't support more students in certain areas. But we've identified all the space that we do have in our programs. So we're open to receive those students should they come. All right. We have a motion, a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. The motion passes unanimously. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rolling through. All right, we're at D. Resolution authorizing school district budget to exceed revenue limits. Yeah, Dr. Garrison, take that. I need to take a break myself. I'll be right back.
Sure.
You go ahead and get started.
No problem. So, over last week, we had the discussion on Thursday, of last week as it pertains to our referenda and our needs here in the district. And naturally, some of the themes that we covered is, again, the non-reoccurring conversation along with the amount. And today, we would have to, of course, make those motions. But before I go there, I want to again thank the board for, again, the lively discussion that we had last week. Again, a lot of these conversations are, again, not done in isolation. There's a lot of learning that comes with doing a referendum. One that we did last year where we did not pass that referendum, came very close. A lot of learned opportunities within that conversation. I always like to note that we did not pass the operational conversation by 405 votes, coming in real shy of 48 to 51% in that ballpark area. This is an operational referenda, and in an operational referenda, the themes that we are, of course, looking to capture is really solely based off of things that we need to continue to run our school district. It's very important to note that the reason why the board did set out to go to operational referendum in your resolution was also very clearly stated as pertains to us not being able to operate in the way we really want to operate on a day-to-day basis here in the school district without the funds that comes with having a referendum. I've made this statement before, and again, I'll say it again, that there's only a few ways that we can actually get funds here into the district. Number one, increase in student enrollment. That also helps over a 3-year time frame, as well as money from the state, because the money comes from the state. And naturally, we can actually go to referenda as well. Referendum is money that comes from the public, and those funds can be used to, again, help us operate our school district and its overall needs. There was a survey that was given and conducted, and again, most of this was covered last week. This is just a high-level overview. Feel free to go back and look at the presentations, of course, to the public and as well as to the board. If you want me to go back over the information, I can. But there was a survey that was conducted that was given to a community, a little over 1,800 or so folk, a little over 1,700, a little over 1,800 or 1,700 people participated in the survey. The survey results came back, and again, the board knew that from the survey results, our highest support was in the $9 million range. 3 dollar ranges were given, 9, 11, and 12.8. Those dollar ranges that were given, or again, helped us set the stage for what we will have to do in this conversation. The $9 million will give us the support that we need to continue to operate our district with still making some budgetary cuts. The $11 million conversation gave us a little more opportunities and allowed us to actually grow with still some very minor changes that we would need to make to our overall budget. And then the $12.8 million was the largest of the 3 options, which gave us the opportunity to pretty much have balanced budgets up until that 3rd year, where we'd have to make some small changes there. The budgets that I talk about are really based around projections. And one of the things that, myself and Mr. Chady has been talking about is, this is the projections are as a snapshot of where we are right now. And so at where we are right now, without a past referendum, the projections will be that we'll be at about $10.8 million short in our next year's budget. Okay, and those are projections. Again, throughout the course of the year, getting to the end of the year, that number may or may not change. But one thing that is for sure, we'll have a deficit without a past referendum. Our school district has went through some changes, and the board has allowed me to, guide us through those changes and to get us to this point. Again, we had a referendum last year, an operational referendum, and our operational referendum was for the first year, $14 million, and then the second year, $9 million. It was a 2-year non-recurring referendum. This year, one could argue the 14 and the 10 kind of erased each other because we did balance our budget, and the $4 million additional would have helped us, set aside some funds to help us with our emergency funds. And then again, in the second year, we had a $9 million request on our last year's budget, on our last year's referendum, and according this year, we're coming in at $9 million as where the district is leaning towards as it pertains to referendum. I share all that information because, again, that gives everybody a nice snapshot of kind of where we are and kind of where we're going. I can't say this enough that, you know, the district has positioned itself to continue to make certain changes, but we do need, you know, again, the support of the referendum based off of, again, not only the resolution that the board has set out to do, but just based off of the projections that we've been able to show the board throughout this past year. With that being stated, again, the board came to a consensus, I could say, that $9 million was the number that we would land towards. However, that consensus conversation last week was just to see where we would kind of start drawing up this information to get to the legal side of the conversation. And so tonight, the board would need to vote on that $9 million resolution and or move approval of the resolution of authorizing the school district to budget to exceed revenue limits by $9 million per year for 3 years for non-recurring purposes. And so that's part D of where we are right now.
All right, board members, any questions? Get ready here. I will, before we get started, just note that there's only 6 of us tonight. So you know how it goes when there's 6 of us.
Oh, Ms. Johnson.
All right, Ms. Johnson has a hand up.
So in the email, the proposed question that was sent to us, one of this isn't a question, this part is a statement. One of my concerns is it's still, although in our minds it may be specific, I am concerned that the voters of the school district of Beloit will read this and not think it is specific.
Okay.
And the part where it says we would ensure that the proposed purposes of the referendum question are honored to the best of our abilities, I would suggest we change that from would to will or shall. Thank you.
Thank you, board member. Sorry, thank you, board member Johnson. The response to the question was, again, just general information that we were trying to share with everyone, with the board, of course. One of the things that would be our responsibility is just to honor what's within the resolution, right? And so that would be the direction that we would want to go in. Full transparency, one of the things that comes with an operational referendum is, you know, we just had, as an example, we just had pipes burst throughout the city. I mean, throughout the district, unexpectedly. And so, you know, these things could come with a high cost. And if, let's say, it's not covered in from an insurance perspective, then that money would have to come through some form of operational line items. And so, one of the things that we, again, like we pride ourselves in doing here in the school district is, again, doing what we said we're going to do. And so, if in the resolution we talk about staff compensation and benefits, that's what we'll move towards, if the board wants us to do that. If we say we want to maintain our district's facilities, that's what we will do. Again, there's lights that we need to put up in the high school football field, over $100,000 a pop per light. If we want to make sure we have lights at the football game or at the soccer game or even a band function, we would have to replace those lights. We want to continue our programming as it pertains to where we are right now. We also want to honor the opportunity to help the special education conversation along with instructional resources. And so everything that we've mentioned in the write-up will be the areas in which we would move towards. And so if there's additional information that we would need to provide to our constituents or to the community, we will be more than willing to do that.
Just a question again. What I'm reading on the screen that Mr. Chady has presented, is that the resolution that are we simply, as what's an executive content, moving approval of resolution authorizing? Or do we need to read what Mr. Chady has?
So right now, we would need to read what's in the recommended action.
Okay, and D, the resolution itself.
And D is the resolution itself, and it's also within the, I like to call it board docs, for everyone to possibly see it. That is also part of part E.
That was,
that's more so for question part E. That's the writing of the question is E. $9 million is what we're authorizing now to be our number that we're leaning towards. What Mr. Chady has on the board right now and what Mrs. Johnson was referring to is also part of E. But we're on D. We're on D, which is, again, they're interchangeable. Gotcha. To me, they're right together.
and then that is,
What's presented is for D. That's for D.
Oh, okay, then we have it for E on the other. It says
E is much longer, it's like 3 pages.
oh,
Got
E is what's going to the lawyer,
E is what's going to,
to get on the ballot.
This question speaks specifically to what the board wishes to put on the ballot. E is the board's authorizing to put the question on the ballot.
Okay.
So you're first adopting the question. Second, E would then be to put that question on the election ballot to themselves.
Gotcha.
so for me, they're interchangeable then, right?
No. What is the first? I got it.
The first step is the question. The second step is to put the question on the ballot. Got it.
Like the number 9 million versus the other numbers choices. So then Mr. Tate, do we need to read what's on the board or just read what's in the board docs first? What you're saying?
It would be best to read, legal counsel has done here.
Okay.
Yep, and sent us.
Okay.
Yep.
Which is also in there. Well, yeah, the document I shared, which
I got you.
I had a follow-up question, actually. So piggybacking off of Board Member Johnson, I'm sorry, can you all hear me remotely? Yes, okay, thank you so much. Okay, so piggybacking off of what Board Member Johnson asked about, I also reached out to Dr. Garrison to say like, hey, like I think we need to do some educating around like what this language means. And he, just in chatting before the meeting, showed me like he's got a working draft of like, these are the types of things that the operational referendum would support and how they align to the strategic plan, which I really appreciated because that's just like we heard about with Portrait of a Graduate, like that's the North Star of the high school. That's what everything has to be in alignment to so we can produce the best outcomes for our students through like what's the work the high school is doing. As a board, our strategic plan is our North Star, and every single thing that we do needs to be in alignment to that plan so that we can produce those opportunities for the best outcomes for our kids, right? So I don't know if you're comfortable sharing like your draft of that. I'm kind of feel like a little bit bad because I'm sort of putting him on the spot right now. But I think that in executing a referendum question, there's both like the legal requirements of the question and like what is or isn't appropriate for the ballot. And then there's also the district publication and messaging about like that community education piece. Like what is this actually and like what does it actually mean? So I just wanted to say, Board Member Johnson, what you're saying resonates very strongly with my perspective as well. And I was just hoping to extend the conversation into that, if that's okay. Is that something you could share real quick?
Sure.
Awesome, thank you.
I'm gonna take over the stream real quick from Mr. Chady's presentation. So that'll be bumped out. So one of the things that we wanted to do is again, this is what you were just reading, put it in plain language in an infographic that aligns with our strategic plan. The work that we had to work on over the weekend, naturally, there's a lot of things that we're trying to work. We thought this would be important to kind of bring to the forefront. Thank you again, Mrs. Christopher. I know sometimes we put a lot of things in the room for everybody that works towards this work, but again, it's all of our work. And so thank you, Mrs. Christopher, for helping me kind of put this all together. One of the things that we have to do is, again, align what we want to do with our strategic plan. And so what you see is, again, the question that Mr. Chady was just talking about that we will need to adopt. But then we broke it down from these opportunities that's in the question to how it aligns with our strategic plan. So staff compensation and benefits aligns with culture and leadership and engagement. Maintain our district facilities aligns with our finance pillar. Maintain current course offerings aligns with equity pillar and our whole child pillar. Maintaining programming aligns with our equity pillar and again our whole child pillar. Maintaining class sizes aligns with engagement and our whole child pillar. Instructional,
You guys
just talking to each other.
Yeah, why are you worried? Do you think that?
The instructional resources aligns with our equity and whole child, and our special education aligns with our equity and our whole child pillars. What we want to do is make this like a front to back where people can, if you have any questions about what it is, you can flip our strategic plan over and you will be able to read what those areas would encompass. Naturally, we can also throw a QR code to be more in detail of what that actually looks like in our strategic plan, but we want to make sure we at least started this conversation with these areas.
We are asking you for this money for these reasons.
Correct, because everything that we're asking you for aligns with our strategic plan.
What it takes to become a 3-star and a 4-star and a 5-star district, and to be a district.
And then I just had one more follow-up question that kind of gets into what Mr. Chady was just describing in terms of the language. So I want to respect exactly what you said about like, we need to say what we're going to do, but we also don't want to get too specific because we want to do what we say we're going to do. And sometimes like curveballs come up. One of my question about the special education language is it too specific to include the words like training and staff? So like what I'm reading in my head is et cetera, and for instructional resources and special education training and staffing. Now, I don't know if like that's too specific, and if it is, then I'm going to back off on that, but I just think that's something that I've heard, well, it's something that's important to me, and it's also something I've heard a lot from community members, like we need more training, we need more staff in that area, but I just wanted to bring it up. I'm not going to push if you feel like that's too narrow for the question.
Well, I think when you see instructional resources, and instructional resources could include training, and so
sure.
it's open. The legal has advised us to write it this way to capture some of those other reasons, because you can't just write everything in the question because it has to fit on the ballot, number one. Right. But number two, and they won't let us write, a book of everything. But number two, we also want to allow ourselves to capture what we want to do within the literature that's being provided. So we could capture training in instructional resources if we need to.
So question, so with the language that's there, that's the language the lawyer provided, that we paid the lawyer to provide?
That's correct.
Okay. I got understanding for myself.
Based off of what our needs would be.
Okay. So it wouldn't be erroneous, like if somebody were like, hey Megan, like I heard you guys doing this referendum. What are you guys doing anything about special education staff? I can say, yeah, it's covered in the question because instructional resources is a larger umbrella word that would encompass training and staff. That is accurate.
That's accurate, correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
What you also have to remember is in absence of this referendum passing, we won't be able to do anything. 100%. So we'll have challenges doing a lot of the work.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Comments?
Ms. Johnson, did we answer your question though? Did I answer your question at all?
Yeah, you did answer my question, and I see and understand where you're coming from. I am just really concerned with having had several conversations with normal everyday people in Beloit, stopping them in the shopping grocery store, introducing myself. I'm concerned that it's not specific enough, that it feels rushed, that there is the lack of trust, and I mean you're your alignment to the strategic plan. That's wonderful. That's great. How many voters are going to see this before they're standing in the ballot box looking at the question? I want this referendum to pass. I want the question to be the most robust question and enthusiastic question that any Beloit voter standing in the booth is going to be, of course, we have to get this passed. We have to do this. This, to most Beloiters, and there's nothing against most Beloiters, but I think by the third or fourth line, their eyes are going to glaze over. Just my humble opinion.
I would say I understand what you're saying, because I've been trying to explain this for 3 years. So we asked the question in 2023. We're going to ask it in April 2024. And if people don't respond, we'll be asking in November 2024. So one way or the other, I think that the lawyers would probably give us like a similar template if we had to ask this question in November. Like the lawyers' language to cover our purposes, I don't think is going to change much. The messaging that our communications department provides as they explain it to the community and have opportunity to get in front of different groups. And if we have community support in the form of a yes group form, because last year there was opposition in the form of a no group. And if people understand the difference in 2024 than 2023, we're all hoping that we'll have a different outcome from our use of the school perceptions tool. They're saying that we're at the point where we should pass with this number. It's in the plus or minus of the error margin, of the margin of error. And he said, so go for it. We went last year with less information. And some people say, why don't you go with your capital question first? Because you got all the information for your capital question. Now that we finally have a facilities report, but we'd be able to be in debt to fix our capital issues, but we still would not have money to run the schools, even though we can fix them. So the reality is kind of when we decided in September that we're going to ask our community to fund our operational need first. And it's clear what they can see. We have the Baird model to show that even in giving us this $9 million, it's not enough to support where we're going to be at in 3 years. So we'll continue to demonstrate and make cuts and do different things like we did last year, which is not to lose $5 million in a negative deficit, but to cut that in half. I just think that, whether this passes or fails, we're still going to be demonstrating, look how different we are in November. Look how different we are in 2024. Look how different we are in April 2024 than we were in April 2023. So I do hope it passes also. But that's just kind of how I'm seeing it. I do understand different opinions of it, but it's something that we started in September, and really you could say we started last November because we're continuing an effort. It doesn't go away. If we don't pass it, it doesn't go away, our needs. They just stand there. And then as an example, like in our budgeting this year, when we did not give the maximum increase to the teacher group, like this pipe bursting here, we have to have some margin in our budget for things that we don't even plan for. And that's kind of what we're trying to do as we're making some of the decisions, because, who knows with these pipes bursting, being inches in water of electrical equipment and computers, I mean, it can happen. So that's kind of where we're at. I think that we're trying to demonstrate to our community, but again, like last year, we would be negligent as a board if we didn't put this stuff in front of people. And that's what we did last year. Citizens have the right to say yes or
I'm
no.
not saying don't put it in front of people. I'm just saying I'm concerned that the wording of this question in front of us now, if it's on the ballot, we will lose votes. That's all. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just.
But I'm hoping in the end that people understand yes helps the schools, no doesn't help the schools. Yes will help us, no will not help us. And so I think that like a lot of things, sometimes there's other words that goes along with it, but the simple thing is yes helps, no doesn't help. And that's kind of where we're going to be at on it. So
Maybe we should put that on there.
What do you say? There might be some other messaging around that.
When I worked at Alliant Energy, we used that acronym KISS.
That might come. That might come. Yes equals help. No equals no help. Okay.
Check that by legal.
That might be it. Check that by legal. All right. So at this point, any other board members, questions, comments? Jump into this. It'll be spicy. Who knows? 6 of us. All right. Is there a motion for D?
Mr. Sadie, can you put your
And ask you to read what Mr. Chady has on if you're making a motion.
Point of order.
Mm-hmm.
For policy, only the title has to be read, but you're more than welcome to read more.
Okay. I'll read what's in board docs.
So if we make a motion, we're making a motion to pass the following language. Is that kind of how you want that stated?
Yeah, move approval of resolution authorizing school district budget to exceed revenue limit by $9 million per year for 3 years for non-recurring purposes.
Yeah, so moved.
Okay. All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Greg Schneider with a second. All right. Mr. Schultz, can I have a roll call vote? Is there any discussion first? All right. There you go. Roll call vote, please, Ms. Schultz.
Sure. Greg Schneider,
Aye.
Megan Miller,
Aye.
Brian Anderson,
Aye.
Brian Nichols,
Aye.
Thea Johnson,
Aye.
Sean Levy.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, board members. E?
So E, as Mr. Chady mentioned, E allows us to now move what you saw from a question perspective on to the actual ballot. And so, as we already discussed, our goal is to, get this to the ballot and, get this language again, cross-reference with our lawyers, and, we'll move forward with the different opportunities that we have. Just to let the board know, all of this has to be, to the commission by the 23rd of January. We've collected some of the documentation as needed. There's forms and things that we need to fill out, and just like last year, we met the deadline that's associated with the resolution, and we will of course move forward based off of the vote tonight to make sure that we meet the deadlines to have this question posted on the April 24th ballot.
So for E, is there a motion to move approval of the resolution providing for a referendum election on the question of the approval of a resolution authorizing the school district budget to exceed revenue limit by $9 million per year for 3 years for non-recurring purposes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Megan Miller, seconded by Greg Schneider. Is there any discussion? Mr. Schultz, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Tia Johnson?
Aye.
Frank Nichols?
Aye.
Anderson?
Aye.
Megan Miller?
Aye.
Greg Schneider?
Aye.
Glenn Levy?
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0 unanimously.
Okay. We have that business behind us. And our marketing and communications team will educate our community. Because yes means help and no means no help.
Oh, I had a question.
So we'll get that.
Is there a yes group, like right now?
Yeah, you want to register?
So we have had people approach us about being a part of a yes group. Of course, I'm not at the point now where I can release that information based off of if people got to come in and finish the paperwork and all that kind of stuff. But we have had people come in and express that they are very interested in helping us in that part of the conversation. And through the work that my team and I are responsible to do, I believe that the community be more well informed as pertains to what this will help us with. Again, it is not anyone's intention to not meet the needs of our school district, but in absence of this help or these funds, it does put us in a very tough situation for our school district. So again, there has been expressed. The answer to your question is yes,
Okay.
but not until they come in and finish out the paperwork, then we can actually, release more information.
Cool.
Okay. So now we're on to our consent agenda. Typically, there is no separate discussion of items unless a board,
Committee board.
where we at? Oh, committee board reports. We did move those around. I thought we were done with those. I'm sure they'll go fast though. Committee and other board reports, starting with Business Operations and Finance Committee.
Yeah, I'll start in. That was pretty quick. We have not met since our last full board business meeting. So we'll meet again on Tuesday, the 29th at 5:30 p.m.
Okay, Teaching, Learning, Equity, and Pupil Services.
Nothing to report. Our only agenda item for this evening was covered in the regular board meeting, which is the open enrollment limit for general education, special education.
All right. The Governance Committee hasn't met yet. We will be discussing when we set the agenda something about like our meeting cadence and like how to structure our meetings and our committee structures. We've gone to the structure that we're currently under. We work with Dr. Kieser, but Dr. Garrison and I have been talking about some ways to kind of streamline our work to save us some time.
Okay.
All right. Legislative update.
None today.
Okay. Policy Committee. I think they are meeting or have met.
Yes, we have met, and our next meeting scheduled date is February the 7th, I believe.
Okay. All right, so now we're on to 6, consent agenda. Typically, there's no separate discussion of items unless a board member so requested, which event the items will be removed from the general order of business and considered in their normal sequence on the agenda. Is there anybody who needs to remove anything from the consent agenda?
I would like to remove item B.
Okay. All right, so that's B. Anybody else? Well, I'll add A to the list. So A and B, anybody else? All right, so we'll deal with everything else first.
I'd like to move approval of the consent agenda minus items A and B.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Greg Schneider with a second. Megan Miller with the motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. That was unanimous. I didn't hear any nays. Heard everybody. All right. And so now A and B. I'll start with A. Together, I'm addressing A first, but A and B together. I don't personally, as the board president and working with the superintendent to set the agendas, I don't see a need for a change in A or B. But I'm speaking to A first, just that I don't think it needs a change. So I will not be supporting that. And if anybody else has an item. So if there is support for it to be accepted, now will be your motion. If you're not moving to pass it, then it'll just remain as it is.
First reading. Brian has a hand up.
Yep,
Sean.
okay. Brian?
Just a question. Have you know, again, because I'm not the board president, I haven't personally had an issue with this. Have there been instances where there's been requests to have things on the agenda that have not been fulfilled? I'm just looking for the impetus for the potential change in the policy, because I wouldn't be exposed to it.
I think that the policy chair felt that like we needed a more defined process. There's some items that are tangent, not exactly related to our girls' basketball situation. In setting the agenda with Dr. Garrison, I did provide a response to that board member on this morning about the specific request. But one of the things that happens is there are things that happen in the district. And, you know, if you think about like our pacing in our meetings, really Dr. Garrison and I have worked to kind of limit the things that we're dealing with on the agenda. And as a board, we're at a different place than where we were. So we have less things to tackle now than we did before. You know, there's all board members can make requests. And then items are placed on the agenda by the superintendent and the board president together. With some of particularly the requests about like our questions about our conference that we're in, we're not even through the first full season in the conference. And at the moment, questions about our conference, it's just a different discussion. That was going to take a different amount of time. That Dr. Garrison, when we talk about the day-to-day operations and where we're at, when that happened last week, well, during the week before Christmas break, that we're only one full weekend back in the school before we're here today. So even though time has passed, the opportunity for our staff to make moves on the requested item are not there. And if you think about, like I said again, when the agenda is set, we've got superintendent evaluation, superintendent contract, we've got referendum questions, we got administrative contracts. So there's an order of things that we're trying to get through, and the resolution to the situation that he's working on. In that situation, we're not even there yet. So it wasn't placed on. And so I think, you know, the member felt that there could be more definition to how this happens. But the reality is, from my perspective as the board president, is that the system we have is not broken. You know, sometimes we have to wait in that sequence. No one is being put off. That they're not going to get what they're asking for to come up, but where it comes up, it matters. As example, tonight, if we would have voted differently tonight, we could be dealing with our referendum question again next week in a special meeting. So that's kind of that's the gravity of the things that I have to consider when I'm setting the agenda. So that's my perspective on that item. Any other questions? Board Member Johnson?
Not a question, just a concern. So on the 171.1, the superintendent's administrative assistant or board secretary shall be responsible for notifying the official paper, so on. My only concern with that is when there is a task at hand and it gets assigned to either this person or that person, that sometimes there might be miscommunication. So is there some practice that the administrative assistant or the board secretary are going to have to ensure that this gets accomplished?
So one of the things that, when we look at this part right here, the board secretary is really in place to take the minutes for the meetings. That's what she's in place for. And I know Mrs. Shope is here in the room, so I don't want to make it seem I'm not talking about Mrs. Shope. I'm always disrespectful of that thought process. But in absence of Mrs. Shope being in the room, this work also falls on my administrative assistant, which is Mrs. Shope and Donna Dooley. And both of them are, again, qualified to take care of this work in absence of, again, Mrs. Shope not being here. And not to say that, again, Mrs. Shope there's been times in which Mrs. Shope she has to be out, and there's other administrative assistants that has to be a part of this conversation. And so that's why I think this was added that way, to both capture if someone else is doing this part of the work, that's fine. If Mrs. Shope is doing part of the work, that's also fine. So that's kind of why that was kind of captured that way.
Yeah, in the original policy, it says superintendent secretary shall be responsible for notifying the official newspaper of all meetings and providing meeting notices to the board members. My position in general is, the way we've been working, it's not a problem. So I'm not interested in changing it. So again, on 171.1 this is the first reading, but for us to even move forward with it, I guess, is there anyone a motion for it? It's acceptance, or just leave it as is? So I don't hear anybody offering a motion. I'll ask again a second time. And then this is the third time, and I'm going to move on to 171.2, because nobody's offering a motion. All right, 171.2. Board Member Schneider.
Okay. I know this section was added partially to give some definition around time framing as to when, if a board member or somebody makes a request for an agenda item, when they would hear back from that. I know from that point, it also then includes the portion of that if it is denied, a board member can, or an item can be brought back by any board member or the majority of the board members to the full board to make a decision on it. I was initially against this. The portion of being able to bring those items back. I believe that our superintendent and our board president do a good job as they look at any requests that come forth. I did in the end, with some changes, agree to this portion of it, as long as that we also added a sentence. I'm going to offer that before it goes to vote. So my change would be in the sentence that is in green, that starts all denied agenda items. And it would change it so it reads this way: all denied agenda items that are the direct responsibility of the board and not day-to-day operations come requested by board members and then continue with the rest of that sentence.
Which, we're at in the green.
It would be the second sentence in the green. The third line, it begins with all denied agenda items.
I see it.
Okay. I want to make sure that if we are bringing something back up for discussion, it has to be something that is the direct responsibility of the board and not just picking up anything because somebody doesn't like something that's happening. So, I mean, there's the day-to-day operations. That's the responsibility of the superintendent. You know, and that's where that responsibility lies. So that if the board is going to pick up a denied agenda request, it has to be for what is in the direct responsibility of the board.
I understand that. I think we're kind of in an open discussion. Simply, again, to me, nobody's item has been denied, so I don't think there's a need for a change.
Board member.
Yeah, no board member has had an item denied.
I'd like to offer up, could we simply postpone this item, just because like the committee chair isn't here, and I think we're lacking some context, and I think that's an excellent suggestion, Board Member Schneider. I just think let's postpone it for a future meeting.
Yeah, it came out of the committee, so it landed here today. So.
Right. I mean, unless somebody wants to feel strongly, I don't want to cut anybody off. That was just a suggestion. I'm not making a motion to postpone. I'm just throwing that out there.
I'm open to coming back to it with the other person, with the other board, with the board member present.
Okay.
To add to it. It's fine with me.
You know, that covers it.
Anybody else with any thoughts for 171.2? We can just leave it as is and come back to it again.
Just so the board know, this is the first reading too, so, you know, this will allow, you know, that space to come back for first reading again, if this is what y'all want to do as it pertains to postponement.
You know, if you don't pass it, it don't pass. That's the other part too. So, going once, going twice. 3 times it'll come back up as it comes back up. We are now on to future meeting dates. Governance, Tuesday, January 23rd, 2024 at 6 p.m. Business Operations and Finance, Tuesday, February 6th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. Human Resources, Tuesday, February 6th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. Regular board meeting, Tuesday, February 6th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Policy Committee meeting, Wednesday, February 7th, 2024, 5:30 p.m. It is January 16th, and it's already talking about February. That's like going. Time is moving there. All right, we are now at 8A adjournment at 9:30. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
All right, this is Brian Nichols. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's Brian Anderson. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. That's unanimous. We are adjourned at 9:30 p.m. Good night, everybody.
Good night, all. Stay safe.
Buddy.
All right. It's cold outside.
Okay.
Before you say anything.
I don't want to say that.
Anybody else?